What this is a group coaching call. It's a mastermind. It's a public event I'm running to give folks who are not in my courses a chance to see the kind of sessions that we're doing inside the course. So this is not just a general Q&A. It's not a class. It's not a workshop. There's no agenda. The agenda is you. So I don't bring it. You bring it. You bring your biggest LSAT challenge, the biggest thing holding you back, and we'll dive deep. We'll see where it goes. I'll give you feedback. I'll invite others to give you feedback as well. And so it's kind of fun. It's a fun format. I love doing this. It's one of my favorite things. So a couple of links to give you all a sense of just what this is about in case you want to see more now or later. I've got 2 previous sessions I've run on the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel and podcast, public sessions, as well as a link to the courses if you would like to find out more. No obligation, obviously, but the links are there if you want to check them out. So if you'd like to be in the hot seat and get some coaching from me as well as from others in the group, just use the raise hand function here in Zoom or type in the chat and I'll call on you and invite you to come on in and join. So type in the chat, use the raise hand function in Zoom, and we'll bring you in. I know that some of you emailed me in response to my earlier email expressing interest in getting some coaching, so I'm happy to support you there. Hanye, I know that you emailed me regarding, I believe, reading comprehension. So if you'd like to come on in, just unmute yourself and turn on your camera and join us.
Hello.
Hey, Hanya, how you doing? Welcome.
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks. I'm good. So what's going on for you in reading comp?
So I think the first thing is my reading speed is quite slow. And then also, I'm actually not really sure what's going on, but like reading comprehension is my section with the lowest score. And I think sometimes I can't get the inference right. And also with the, I know like I have to go back to the passage to find the detail, but usually I can't find the like right one to eliminate the wrong answers.
Okay, and what have you done for reading comp in terms of passages and in terms of your initial approach? So how many passages and what's your approach like?
So my approach is like I have finished reading the passage and I go to questions, and then looking at the questions, I identify which type of question it is, and then decide if I need to go back to the passage to find specific area to like pick out which one is the right correct answer.
Right. So you're reading the passage, going to the questions, going back to the passage and hunting for the information you need.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
My question though is, when you initially read the passage, what are you looking for? How are you going about it? How many minutes are you taking? What are you looking for? Talk to me about that.
So for one passage I was doing today, I took around 5 minutes and 30 seconds to read the whole passage. It was a science passage. And I was looking for general structure. Like, for example, that passage, the first sentence is about like forest is blah, blah, blah thing, blah, blah, blah. And then it's about economic and the ecological interest, the passage mentioned in the verse. And I know, so this topic is about forest and about its economic interest. And then for the later, I look for its structure. For example, it brings up about like 2 claims, and then the second passage is like discussing about the first claim, and third passage discussing about the second claim. And then I look for author's attitude and the structure.
I like that. Yes, it is about the structure. It's about the attitude. It's not about the details. So when you say there are 2 claims, fantastic. You're focusing on the way the passage author is going about laying out the passage. As you know, it's about forest, it's about economics, but it's also not really about those things. It's not really about the content. You want to think about how certain are they in their claim? How broad is their claim? What is their tone? Are they skeptical? Are they supportive? And how far in one direction or the other? So you're looking at the right things, but you also said to me 5 minutes and 30 seconds just reading the passage. Now, do you have extra time on the LSAT, or are you limited to the 35 minutes?
35 minutes.
Okay, so obviously you want to get that down, right? So 5:30 on the passage read gives you 3 minutes and change on average for about 7 questions. So 30 seconds a question obviously isn't going to be enough. You're going to want to get that down. So your approach sounds pretty good in terms of what you're looking for, but we've got to get it down further.
Okay.
Now, the question is how, and part of that will simply be practice. What other ways do you think you might be able to shave off time aside from simply practicing more?
Maybe like read articles in different like areas, like science, like humanities, different areas.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, right? The Economist, Scientific American, people are always saying that, right? When are you taking the LSAT? What's your target test date?
I'm taking it in September 2nd, and then I'll take next one either in October or November.
Okay, so obviously September 2nd, just a few days away. We're not going to radically change anything between now and then, right? So I'm going to think more about, okay, October, November, so a month or two from now. What could you do a month or two, over the course of the next month or two? Economist, Scientific American, those are more longer term strategies. That's what I would say to a college freshman who's saying, I'm taking the LSAT 3 years from now. What should I be doing? And I'd say, okay, yeah, do some light stuff to build up. But a month or two from now, you've got nearly 400 released passages. And how many have you done up to this point? How many passages have you completed?
I'm not sure, maybe like 40, not much.
Okay, so you've done about 10% of all the passages out there. So there's still a lot more available. I wouldn't be going to The Economist and considering that LSAT prep. I would focus on the actual passages. So practice is good. Just reading those with certain key things in mind, like we said, structure. You could think about what's the tone, what's the main idea of those passages, and then read those almost casually, maybe with more time than you have on the LSAT, and then aim to simply walk away with what's the main idea, what's the author's opinion, and how fast can you read a passage and take that away. So you could give yourself 20 minutes. You could also give yourself 2 minutes. Could you read a passage in 2 minutes and walk away simply with tone and main idea and solve those specific questions? Do that 10 passages in a row, not even bothering with the detailed ones, because you said you've got a rhythm down in terms of going back and finding those details and quickly skimming for what you're looking for. But are you always getting main idea questions right? Main idea is like orientation in logic games. It should be a warm-up. It should be almost a gimme. But if you're not getting tone and you're not getting main idea, even on a tough passage, there's something to work on there.
And also there's another type of question called like primary purpose. I sometimes like get confused between the main idea and primary purpose question.
There's pretty much no difference.
Oh, okay.
There's pretty much no difference between them. Maybe it's slightly different in how it's framed or phrased, but the idea is going to be the same for both.
Okay.
They're both general or global in nature. Now, I've said a lot here, so I want to invite others to chime in. Anyone who feels like they're pretty good on reading comp or has something they could support Hanye with, I want to invite you to just unmute yourself and chime in.
Hanye, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Thank you so much for sharing. I agree with Steve in that I think the focus should be more towards longer term prep. Since you're taking it either October or November, what you're going to do in the next 2 days, I think just calm your mind, take deep breaths. But for RC, one thing that's helped me has been taking very light, very quick notes for each paragraph of for each paragraph of the passages. Not dissertation writing, but just really quick sketches of what each paragraph is trying to say. I think that gives me a sense of what the overall purpose of the argument is, or what the purpose of the passages are, how they compare, if they're comparison passages. I'd also say for reading comp is to don't rush. It's a bit like logic games in which you want to make sure you've digested the passage before going to the questions. Unless you're like running low on time, let's say you have 5 minutes left or something, and you're just starting a passage. If you have 5 minutes left, you're just starting a passage, then just go straight for like the specific questions or the questions that you can tick off really quickly. But if you're just trying to get yourself started, I would say don't rush to the questions until you have a general understanding of what the passage is saying, because if you don't understand the passage yet, then going to the questions isn't really going to help you. At least that's what my experience has been. So I would say just give yourself enough time to actually digest it. I wouldn't spend more than 3 minutes reading per passage, but get yourself to the point where 3 minutes is enough to really understand. And certainly I would say read over it at least twice. I don't just read over once. And then, just do the quick sketches. And then, so I'm sorry, did you mention logical reasoning? Are you still building your strength and your skill set with logical reasoning as well?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm trying to improve it, but my main problem is just reading comprehension.
RC. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, that's what I would share.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I have the same question as Molly. Like, do you read over it twice in 3 minutes, or?
So I would say the whole process of reading over twice and then maybe doing the quick sketches of each paragraph would be 3 minutes.
Okay.
For me. Because I don't, a bit like logic games for me, I don't see, I wouldn't move on to the questions until I understand what the rules are, what's being asked of me. Because if I'm confused going into the questions, then, I'm not going to perform at my best. So I think sometimes people want to jump straight to the questions because I don't want to waste time. But I think that you make up for the time that you might lose understanding, you make up for in speed with answering questions.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Fantastic advice, Richard. Thanks for sharing that. So yeah, I agree that in general, 3 minutes on the initial read is a good benchmark. Maybe it'll occasionally be 3:30 for a really tough passage. Maybe it'll be 2.5 for a relatively easier passage, but 3 minutes sounds pretty spot on. That way you have approximately 1 minute on average per question, maybe slightly less, but that's a good general rule of thumb. Now, I also want to emphasize what Richard said regarding properly understanding the passage, taking the time to understand it on that initial read. Maybe you're not looking to memorize every single detail, but you want to know where they are so you can find them when you need them. And as an exercise, as a drill, sometimes slow down and really take the time to digest every single sentence, every single idea, and maybe paragraph by paragraph. And what does it mean? Why is it there? How are they setting the stage? That's one of my favorite things to do in coaching sessions with students is we'll take one really tough passage and spend 20 minutes just breaking it down and doing the questions. That's obviously more than double on average what you get on test day. But for a really tough one, for example, the riddle basins of attraction, I think it's from test 50, passage 4. I did that one the other day with a student. We just spent a long time going sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, breaking it down. And one thing I'll do is I'll make up examples. I'll make up analogies. For that one, I talked about the riddle basins being like the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, and water spilling into them, and the riddle parts being like topography on a continent. And a lot of that wasn't there in the passage, but I used that as a mental frame to better understand what was going on. And for a really tough physics passage like that, for most pre-laws at least, that was really useful to do. On test day, can you always do that sort of thing all the time? No, but for tougher passages where you don't really have a proper frame of reference, you got that, and they're not giving you good examples to work with, make up your own and see if they fit. And that can at least help you along over the course of answering the questions.
Thank you.
Of course, Tanya. Thanks for joining and sharing what was going on for you. I know. So Cheetah just shared some good information in the chat here about primary purpose questions, asking yourself, what's the author's attitude? Does the author want to inform the reader about a specific point or provide counter arguments? Catch any viewpoints from each paragraph. Yeah, as you're reading, look for specific viewpoints. Look for where the author is expressing their opinion. For primary purpose, the question is, why did the author write this? What are they trying to communicate? Just like in logical reasoning, what's the main idea? What's the main point? What's the main conclusion? If they could only keep one idea, what would that be? What's the reason they even said all of this in the first place? If you could only have one takeaway, what's that takeaway? That's the primary purpose, and that's also the main idea. Same thing. Tone will typically be relatively moderate or qualified in nature, so not wholeheartedly enthusiastic and supported without qualification. Typically, it will be qualified approval or moderate skepticism, something like that, something relatively in the middle, but maybe leaning a little bit one way, a little bit the other way, or they could simply be reporting something. But stay away from going too far into the extremes, typically. And that's actually why The Economist and Scientific American can be useful in a way, because they're not totally partisan, totally in one direction, totally in the other. They're usually looking to provide some sort of relatively objective reporting or analysis on something. Can they have opinions? Sure. But they're not going to be too far in one direction or the other. They're fairly moderate, fairly reasonable, like an academic paper will typically be. And a lot of reading comp passages are adapted from academic writing. All right, let's bring in some other folks. Who else has a challenge that they want to share? Feel free to use the raise hand function or type in the chat. Christina, I'd like to invite you, and I know you've attended a few of these, and I'm sure you've got some things on your mind.
Right now I'm kind of processing. I'm actually taking the exam tomorrow morning. So I'm kind of taking it chill and just taking in these great words of wisdom from everybody, which is really helping calm my nerves at the moment. So, and thank you.
Yeah, sure. Folks are wishing you good luck. Yeah, good luck to you. I mean, I know you've been at this for a while, so I have no doubt you put in the work. And if you have any challenges or questions going forward, just let me know.
Thank you, for sure. I mean, right now it's more just making sure I'm aware of how the flex functions, both in terms of like what it looks like, and making sure I know, I guess the technical ways of how it flows and how ProctorU works and stuff like that. So that's what I've been focusing more on, just so I can go into the test feeling prepared. Like I know the right things to speak to my proctor about in terms of what rules I'm aware of, and just so that we're on the same page as we go into it in case there's technical difficulties.
Yeah, for sure. Well, a couple of quick things I'll share with you. One is there's a website where you can test out your system to make sure it's working well on test day. So if you go to testitout.proctoru.com, test it out with hyphens in between those words, test-it-out, you can walk through live with a ProctorU tech support rep and make sure that everything is good to go. So that way you're not spending 20 minutes figuring things out right before you start. So look at that. Other thing is confirm with them or request that if they have to take over your computer for any reason during the exam, that ask that they pause the time while that's happening, because otherwise the default is that the clock will be ticking. Obviously, you don't want to waste time on that. So just confirm beforehand, hey, if you take over for any reason, can you just stop the clock? And they should agree to that. And then, of course, Control F works. You're allowed to use Control F, so know that as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And good luck to anyone else who's also taking the exam this exam period.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of folks here, and I'm sure you guys will all rock it. If you have any last minute things, of course, reach out, post in the Facebook group. As Sochi just said, the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/LSAT Unplugged. A lot of great folks, a lot of great support there, helping you out with figuring out those things. Obviously, some folks took it today, some folks took it yesterday, and they can obviously guide you on any of the latest things to be aware of. So feel free to post there. Very supportive community. Who else has a question or challenge where you could use support? Now, Ben, I know you were looking for tips, and that's not really what we're doing tonight, but happy to go deeper with you if it would be useful.
I don't know. I was kind of thinking about how I'm going about doing everything, and kind of how I sort of feel unprepared where I currently stand. I know I told you in the email that I'm already signed up for the October 3rd exam, and then I'm probably going to just pay the fee in case I don't do well, the hide score for the first exam takers, and then treat it just as a real time LSAT that is a real LSAT, and if I do well on it, then great. But if not, then I could just hide my score. And then really shooting for the November 7th exam as my main cake. Unfortunately, this year, as you know, there's no December exam. It's only January 16th. And today, especially, I've been toying around with the idea of, do I want to take the October 3rd and the November 7th, or do I want to take the November 7th and the January 16th and have that possibility of, if I do take the January 16th, to then apply late in the application cycle, or just wait another full year? Because I'm currently taking a gap year. I just graduated in May. And I don't know what I would do. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll probably work in a restaurant or something until next fall, but I'm not really too sure what I would do for an additional full year. So I've been kind of thinking about that today. And yeah, some advice on that, if you can.
Yeah. So I guess the biggest question is, do you do October and November, or November and January, or just one of those dates?
Yeah. And like
How long have you been at it for?
Seriously studying, probably like a month and a half. I've had no responsibility, so I've been grinding probably 6 days a week, anywhere from 6 to 12 hours a day. I know that strategy doesn't work for a lot of people, but I enjoy the grind. I've been grinding every single day. My girlfriend just went back to school, and my brother's moving out of the house tomorrow. So all of my distractions are really gone. It's just one less person in the house, and she's away, so I don't need to deal with her and have her take up my time. So I'm probably going to be moving on to 7 days a week. I'm not doing a full 8 or 12 hours every single day. Like, I am spacing out my time. And I saw, actually this morning, it was really funny. I saw your mindful meditation video that you posted, and I was just laughing to myself, because before you said that, so I'm used to meditating. Like, I started doing that 2 years ago, and as soon as I really got into study mode, I found that taking 10 minutes here and there, I do it 3 times a day throughout the course of the day. Whenever I'm taking a break, I'll usually study in like 4-hour blocks. And then I'll meditate before I go to sleep, and that's keeping me sane. So if anybody in this group hasn't seen that video or is stressing over studying, Steve said it, and I'm doing it. I'm a guinea pig that can vouch for his words, that the mindfulness meditation really is a lifesaver, because I would be going crazy if not for that.
Dude, awesome. I'm glad that you took that to heart and that it's working for you. You're doing it. I wondered, though, about that pace. I know you said you're taking breaks. You're not doing every single day necessarily, but could you maintain that pace until January? Do you think you could?
Do I think I could? Yeah, probably. I don't think that I would necessarily maintain that pace if I did follow through with the January exam, just because of the burnout factor. So initially I was going to start studying back in June, and 2 weeks into studying every single day, I was like, I'm going to burn out if I do this from June until November. So I started studying really the beginning of July, or middle of July, probably around the 17th. I would probably cut back on my study hours, but still work probably 6 or 7 days a week, just because I still don't have any responsibilities. I live with my parents. This is my only priority. It's detrimental. It decides the rest of our lives, basically.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What do you think is missing from your prep that you wouldn't be ready for October, working at the pace that you're working?
I think it's nerves. I think it's the fear of not reaching the score that I want to reach. And also, I'm having all of these nerves blindly, and I haven't really taken any practice tests. The only practice test that I took was diagnostic, and I did horribly because I didn't care about it. I took it with a grain of salt. Like, I was going back and forth between taking the test, eating dinner, having the dog barking, my mom yelling at my twin brother, playing Call of Duty during one of the sections. Like, I didn't take it seriously, and I know my score doesn't reflect what I knew or what I do know now, because I know that I've learned so much in the time that I've been studying. And yeah, I guess that's really it. Just the fear of the unknown. But
How can you get over that? How can you get over it?
I'm going to take the practice test tomorrow.
The practice test. I mean, you've got about a month till the October exam.
I'm planning to probably take them either every day and then review, or every other day. I'm really fortunate that we have the flex exam right now, honestly, because especially for review, it's a shorter test to actually take, and it's a shorter test to actually review versus if it was a 5-section test. So I'm a little lucky in that respect, but yeah, I just need to start taking practice tests. Otherwise, what am I doing?
Well, that's your answer. I mean,
yeah,
if you keep taking practice tests and your scores are where you want them to be, then go for October. If you want to hit your fullest potential, I would guess November is a better option. And you could still apply this cycle. You talked about taking another entire year and what you do during that time. I get it. Listen, I mean, for some people, taking January would make the most sense if they could maximize their score. If that's what would allow them to reach their top score, you could still apply this cycle and it'd be fine. Obviously, it's a little bit later. Maybe chances are a little bit lower, but a higher score could offset that. But it sounds to me like you've got the time where you could hit a high score in November and maybe even October. Who knows? I mean, I don't typically recommend doing only, you said a month and a half up to this point, right?
Yeah.
More or less. All
like
right. So that gives,
middle of July.
All right. So that would give you about 2.5 months till October. And so that's on the shorter side, but full-time study changes things versus part-time study. So
yeah, it's very different. And I've learned that I can't really speak to many people and relate to them, because the LSAT, everybody has different responsibilities and different lives. And you could be working full-time and only doing a couple hours a week. If you're lucky, you could have kids, you could have pets, you could have real responsibilities that I fortunately don't have any of right now. So I am able to devote my full time to it, and I just haven't spoken to anybody. The only person who I've spoken to who did have a full, he did it in 1 month. This was probably in the late 80s or 90s. It's my cousin. He studied for a month every day for 8 to 12 hours a day and scored what would now be like a 172. Nice. And he went to Georgetown.
Cool. Well, listen, I mean, burnout's real. So if it's working for you, I'm not going to say don't do it, but I'd also say you're probably the exception in that case, especially during COVID. It's too easy to do nothing but this because too many other things like socializing, being out in public, a lot of those are removed, at least in certain. So be careful about that. Be on the lookout for it. If you start taking exams, don't do them every single day. At least max every other day, along with detailed review is plenty. Now, Cora mentioned in the chat, she said, I wonder if Ben could use a tutor. Now, Cora, if you're interested, if you're open to it, I'd love to hear more about your thoughts for Ben as to what he might be able to benefit from in that case.
I haven't had a one-on-one tutor yet, but I do take a lot of your classes. And I'm just wondering if having that, if you're thinking about having more of that one-on-one, either with Steve or with another tutor that can actually help you out. I think for that would be if you are taking your prep test, you're able to figure out where your weaknesses are, and then a tutor can actually help you
hone in on those weaknesses.
Hone in on those weaknesses. So then you feel actually better for your either your October or your November test. That's just my own, and something I've been toying with too, just because I've been studying since June and I know where my weaknesses are. So that was just my 2 cents.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Cora. Yeah, it's interesting because people will talk to me about analytics and they'll say, oh, I notice I'm disproportionately getting this question type wrong, or I'm not noticing any differences in where I'm getting things wrong. And I'll say to them, it's not always about question type. Sometimes you just need to walk through difficult problems in depth. And then a coach or a tutor or an instructor of some kind can look at things differently from how you might look at them. Like I was talking about the riddle basins of attraction, reading comprehension passage, just walking through that in depth, giving my cold take on it where I haven't looked at it in maybe several months. So I'm looking at it essentially cold, but with my experience, I'm noticing certain things and calling out certain things. You may not need me specifically, and we may not even work well together, but I would say, if you think that the analytics aren't giving you enough guidance in terms of what to be looking for, or your review process isn't deep enough, then yeah, it might be worth exploring working with somebody one-on-one, maybe not for a full coaching program, maybe just a couple hours here, a couple hours there as needed, but think about what you're looking for and what might be missing from your prep. And the fact that you're studying full-time means that you can get a lot out of working with someone, because the insights you gain from those sessions, you can apply to studying more effectively on your own immediately for several hours every single day if you want to.
Mm-hmm. So I have 2 follow-up questions to what you just said. The first is in regards to your assistant who scored the 174. Yeah. Would they possibly be able to help me in that respect?
Yeah, absolutely. Just shoot me an email and we'll talk more about it. I can send you his info.
Sure. And then the other question that's totally aside from the conversation that we just had. I was watching another one of your videos the other day, and I was meditating at night, and a thought just came to me. Like I was just running through the regular day, watching my thoughts as they're going by, and it was your video on about thinking of logical reasoning questions based on the arguments method of reasoning. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on that and your thinking in that. You're the only person who I've really seen anywhere online say that, and it really interested me because it was a short video, but when the video was playing, it was going through everything and just like things were clicking in my head. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. So let's say, in logical reasoning, you've got the stimulus, you've got the question stem, and you've got the answer choices. And I could imagine, I don't know that they do it this way, but I could imagine theoretically that a person who writes LSAT questions, they could have a structure where one person writes the stimulus, not even knowing what question type it will be. Somebody else writes the question stem, somebody else writes the choices. I'm just making this up. But I think it's possible because any given argument that contains a gap, as pretty much all LSAT questions do, if they're arguments, they contain gaps where the evidence does not 100% guarantee the conclusion. There's room in between there where there's underlying assumptions or maybe flaws, depending on how you look at it. And so we could take any argument with a gap or a flaw and say, this could be a flaw question, or it could be a necessary assumption question, or we could be asked to strengthen it, or we could be asked to weaken it, or evaluate the argument. There are lots of things you can ask about an argument. If we're giving them the benefit of the doubt, in that gap, we could say, what's an underlying necessary assumption that is required in order for that argument to work? Versus, we are assuming this argument failed to consider something or is taking something for granted. And so what I'm saying is that there's room to play there. Where let's say maybe you hate weakened questions, but you love strengthened questions. They're just two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Supply information from one perspective and you're strengthening it. Flip it around and you're weakening it. So you're referring to my video on YouTube, by the way, titled 170 plus LSAT logical reasoning strategy, which is one of my more popular videos. And in that video, I give the example of Yelp reviews, right? So I'm saying that we should eat at that restaurant. After all, it has 5 stars on Yelp. So it would strengthen that argument if we knew that Yelp reviews were reliable, that Yelp is good at filtering out fake reviews or reviews from friends and family. You could weaken it if you supply the opposite, where you say Yelp reviews are not reliable. You could do the same thing with an argument based upon a study or a survey. If you say the study or survey is well conducted, you're strengthening it. If you're weakening it, you could say the study or survey was not well conducted. Or you could say the argument takes for granted that the study was well conducted. Maybe it wasn't. Or you could say the argument is assuming that the study was well conducted. Lots of ways to frame it with the exact same ideas. I'm thinking, for example, of a question I covered recently with a student that was about people eating fish and getting omega-3 fatty acids. And then we have an association between that and heart disease. I think this was from either test 80 or test 81, if anybody wants to look it up. And the idea was, well, there's a correlation there. Those who eat the fish tend to have reduced heart disease risk. Well, what if those are just people who are healthy in general and they also happen to exercise? Well, maybe exercising is the factor that is leading to reduced heart disease risk rather than eating the fish oil. And so you have to control for that. The study may not have been well conducted. And so we strengthen the argument if we say they controlled for that exercise factor. We weaken it if they say we failed to consider that. We say it's flawed if they failed to consider that. And necessary assumption, they are assuming that that was controlled for, that that's not an external potential alternative cause. So we're focusing on the method of reasoning in the stimulus and that gap, and we're dealing with the gap in a variety of different ways. This is regardless of question type, which means that sometimes the work is not to just drill necessary assumption questions. Sometimes the work is to better understand the stimulus. We were talking earlier about reading comp with Hanye. Rich was pointing out that just slow down, understand the passage better. And that applies here also. I'm saying understand the stimulus better, understand the method of reasoning better, understand the argument. If you do that, the question type may not even matter once you're at a certain point. You've been on the grind for like a month and a half, 8 hours a day or so approximately. You're probably beyond that. You probably know the different question types at this point if you've focused a bit on logical reasoning. It could just be you're getting questions wrong because they're hard questions with harder methods of reasoning in the stimulus, and that's what you got to look at. And that's why you got to dissect that better. When I talk about proper review, I talk about the Socratic review method, where you're really analyzing your thought process and seeing where your misunderstanding stems from. And it may not be question stem. It may be getting deeper into the method of reasoning in the stimulus. It may also be better understanding the answer choices and what makes them tempting, what makes them wrong, what makes right answers discouraging, and what makes them right. So I've said a lot there. How's all that sinking in?
Yeah, no. It's thank you. That was great. Yeah, definitely soaking up everything that's going on in this chat and everything that you're directly saying to me. So thank you for that. And it's a really interesting theory that you have that I agree with. Is very possible, if not probable, that there could be different people writing the LSAT questions. But that's a really good way of thinking about the logical reasoning questions and tackling them, in just that they're very malleable and there are gaps in all of them. And yeah.
I want to ask you one more question, Ben, because you got potentially, you said you got like a month till October, maybe 2 months till November, and then maybe even January. Maybe you're still playing with that.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. Well, yeah. You said 6, 12 hours, 6, 10, maybe even 12 hours a day, if I heard right. How could you cut that down so that you could get more out of 5 to 6 hours than you could out of 8 hours? How could you study more efficiently? Is there room there? What could you do differently?
Not have my phone in the room. Not have my phone in the room. I've been keeping it on do not disturb, but just the fact that it's right next to me would definitely help. And I think me speaking it out loud to you now is definitely something that I need to do, and I'm going to do. because that'll hands down help my studying efficiency without a doubt.
Nice, dude. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
5 to 6 hours focused could be equal to 12 hours with sporadic breaks periodically.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Also to anybody else, if anybody is doing crazy study hours like me, taking breaks throughout the day and even just 10 minutes of mindful meditation makes a world of a difference, because you could be slowly going crazy to the point of burnout. Then you need to know when to step away and when to collect yourself, go on a walk. I found bike riding is huge for me. I'll start my day, I'll go for 10, 20, 30 mile bike ride, and then I'll hit the books all day.
Yeah, exercise is huge. Yeah. And taking those breaks also huge. I put a couple of recommendations in the chat. One is called the Focus app. It uses something called the Pomodoro technique, which cycles through periods of work and periods of break. And so that can be a way to help train yourself to take breaks at specific times. During the break, you can do whatever you want. If you want to check your phone, you want to check the internet, you can do that. You want to go for a walk, you want to do 10 push-ups, you can do that. You want to go get a drink of water, get a snack, you can do that. But there's always a defined schedule time where that's coming up. And until then, not allowed. Got to stick with the LSAT. We've got some great feedback in the chat here. So Cheetah said, I put a time screen on my phone. My apps on my phone will disappear until 3 p.m. That's cool. So I suppose this is an app of some kind where, or some sort of control device where you can check the time on your phone. Maybe you can use the stopwatch on there if you want. I'm not sure about it, but there's a way to at least remove that temptation for yourself. And Richard says the bike rides, biking to the downtown area with friends a couple times. Yeah. Taking breaks, getting outdoors, getting some fresh air.
So something, I'm just going to touch upon the bike rides really quickly. So in my very minor inquisition into law schools, very minor because it's premature, I don't know what I'm scoring, everything's up in the air. I was just curious, and I was looking up like law school bicycle clubs or like cycling clubs. And the dean of Fordham Law says that cycling and law go hand in hand. And there's a picture of a bicycle next to the scale of justice. And it was just hysterical. So
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it works. It's therapy, and it's really good for you.
Nice. Definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Ben. We got Molly in the chat talking about her Pomodoro strategy with a 50-10 interval. So I'm guessing that's 50 minutes of work, 10 minutes of break versus the 25-5, 25 minutes of work, 5 minutes of break. Molly, do you want to share more on that? Feel free to unmute yourself and share.
Yeah, I feel like if I have a 5-minute break, I just feel like kind of rushed through it, or like I didn't actually get that good of a break. But like a 10-minute break lets me like walk around or something. And also if I'm like doing a study book or something, like 50 minutes lets me like get through a chapter and like find a good stopping point. I just feel like it's like, it depends on your attention too. You know, like some people like 50 minutes is a really hard time to like concentrate more. But for me, I feel like I can like find a good stopping point, try like set a goal to like get through a whole chapter of whatever I'm studying, or, you know, like finish a whole task, and then have a break where I come back actually feeling like rejuvenated and ready to like hit the books again.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that, Molly. I think that makes a lot of sense, actually. And Pomodoro is one of those things where your mileage may vary, adjusted accordingly. I think it's more about that ratio than the exact number of minutes. And one cool thing about going beyond 25 is that LSAT sections are 35 minutes. So 25 is shorter than an LSAT section. You wouldn't be able to complete the entire thing before the break time. But a 50-minute period of work gives you 35 minutes to do the section, plus a little bit of time to maybe check your answers, review a little bit, look up some things, and then take your break. So I like that a lot. And you could do something in between too. You could do maybe 35-7 approximately, but obviously round numbers are a little bit easier.
I'm just laughing to myself right now because I found that I'm kind of doing that, but taken to the extreme. So I'll do 4 and 40.
Yeah. So you're saying 4 and 40? You mean 40 work and
four hours and 40 relax.
Oh wow. 4 hours. So you're okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's just me.
Yeah, I hear that. So I mean, consider modifications, do what you got to do. But like I said, I think that a lot of what you're doing can work up to a point, but does run the risk of burnout for most people. Obviously, everybody's different, but be open to cutting it down. And again, as you said, remove your phone from the equation. Maybe those extreme work periods can be reduced down a little bit and more time for bike riding.
Yeah, I definitely agree. All right. I feel like I've
I feel like you got what you needed.
Time.
No, do you know this was fantastic. I really enjoyed connecting with you, but I feel like you got what you needed.
Yeah, I definitely did. Thank you for talking with me.
Yeah, of course, Ben. I see a question from Cora here about paper versus computer. You want to share more?
So I'm doing 2 courses right now. I have your course, Steve, and I also have Test Max, which I got a lot of books with. So one thing I've noticed when I'm doing my homework and doing my prep test and everything is paper, I do very well, even timed and everything. When I try to take that same concept and do it electronically on the computer, I don't know if it's anxiety or I really do lose focus. And I mean, just a little bit ago or a couple hours ago, I was trying to do one of the prep tests and I was on RC and I got through one of the, the big one of them and then got to the second one and I just quit. I exited out of it. And then I'm just trying to figure out, I don't know, it's an age thing too. I'm old school, so I do like paper than compared to somebody right out of college. So I don't know, I'm trying to figure out where that gap is.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I also prefer the more old school paper. It's a little bit of an adjustment to do things on screens, and screens have all their temptations and we associate them with different things than with books, right? Like print material typically, I would say, is higher quality than what you see on the computer with social media, BuzzFeed, listicles, that sort of stuff, different associations, different reading habits. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if there's a way around it other than just doing it more. And maybe try to increase the quality of everything you do on the computer to have that association. What's your target test date, Cora?
I'm signed up for November. So that gives me 5 months total of study time.
Okay. And so you're moving into the later phases of your prep right now as the exam approaches, moving more into timed work, right? Timed sections, timed exams.
Right. And I'm, I've been using the 3-month plan. And so going through where it was like a week of logic games and then a week of LR. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. And on my study routine. And I got to keep from, I don't know if it's anxiety or whatnot of why I keep shutting down. And then I'm like, screw it, exit out. And then too, it's weird too, because on paper, and this is a bad habit of the underlining and like even on RC, I have making my little notes because I do the whole thing that I know you guys were talking about after each paragraph of something, you summarize and whatnot. And I do that, but it's been on paper. It's been very hard to take that same habit and do reading electronic and then writing on paper, even with LR, with sufficient, necessary, and whatnot too. So I've been my biggest hurdle right now.
No, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, I shared my quick take on that, but I want to invite others who have had similar struggles or those who feel comfortable with doing the work on screen to share some of their feedback and thoughts.
I actually had a thought about that. I completely am right there with you, Cora. I'm a little bit older, not the typical age, and this is actually going to law school would be a second career for me.
Same.
And I'm a psychologist, actually, and so have gone through all of that and the licensure exam. This format is really hard. I took the test yesterday, and I had prepared for a couple of months, and I was very struck by the anxiety that I had. Like, I feel like, when I've taken standardized testing before you're in an auditorium or wherever, you have this sort of like privacy, this kind of imagined privacy around you, but you're in the company of other people. And there was just something about it that was really difficult, even though, I was alone in a room in my home and I had enormous privacy, but it doesn't feel the same. And the hardest thing for me yesterday, and this was the thing I wanted to comment on, it's just so unfortunate that the first thing you have to start with is the analytical section, because I think that's a section that's very sensitive to anxiety. If you start to feel overwhelmed, it becomes more difficult to do that section. And it builds one question after another. So it's not like the separate, from the other sections where you can kind of start again and start again and start again. You have to really have it going on. And I was so anxious. And I sadly, I have no idea because it was just yesterday, but I kind of feel in retrospect that I did underperform given what I've been doing on practice. And I'm going to take it again in November. I guess I'm not really surprised that the anxiety made it difficult to manage that section. That's the hard section for me because it's kind of, you don't know what you're facing. It's so varied, and you don't know what kind of games there'll be. And I absolutely perform better on certain types of games, and not quite as well on others. And boy, it just starts, and there you are, and it's boom, the tough one, the analytical section. We have to keep it together to be able to perform. All I can think of is, in retrospect, coming off of it, I just have to practice, practice, get more familiar with the games, do it, so that it's like anything, the anxiety will be diminished the more familiar you are with what's going on. Just going to practice, and so that as whatever I get will just feel less threatening, less, I won't be as agitated when I start. But boy, anxiety and speed, as you get older, speed, that I can do the analytical questions. I very rarely come across one that I don't understand, but I can't do them nearly as quickly as maybe I would have 20 years ago. And speed is everything, It'll just move from item to item to item, and efficiency, speed. So that coupled with anxiety, it makes it tough.
Yeah, I have, thank you, Tina, for sharing that. I have something to add as well. Cora, I agree with you. I had a lot of written textbooks that I purchased and got from friends. And I was practicing for months on paper before I switched to the LSAT digital platform. Something that's been helpful for me, particularly with reading comprehension, has been adjusting the size of the text on the screen. You can do that. And then spacing them out. So I'll have them usually at the smallest size and then kind of like a one space in between. I like it because I think that the way that you get it, it's like bigger letters and they're all squashed together. Words kind of blend together, but the way I do it, I think lets you kind of break each line separately. And so the ideas, I think, are less jumbled. I think it's also easier for when you use Control F, finding specific words and things. They're not all, they don't just run together as much as they would if everything was squashed. I think that might help. And then maybe, as Steve likes to say, play around, having a brighter screen, less split screen, seeing which one is more comfortable for you. But then otherwise, just building up your familiarity. But I definitely understand because it's definitely, I prefer written as well.
Yeah, I wish it was an option.
Yeah.
I would go old school.
Yeah.
So question to you, Richard, and for anybody else that are, because I know you're trying to score into the 170s. As far as, I'm trying to, going from, we were talking about the paper, and you can really write everything that you're thinking on the actual questions. All right, so with keeping up with speed, how are you able to do that with your paper being separate from your screen? With time, you're watching the time and things like that with RC, LR, and also with the games.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question because I think that the big thing is practice. I'd say what I mentioned earlier about digesting the passages. And I'm still getting better with logic games, but what I've learned is that, the more you can get up front, the better. So I think you save time, and if you try to go to the questions too quickly, you're going to lose time constantly referring back to the passage. If you don't make the kinds of inferences that you need to with logic games, you're going to waste time later going back to the rules, because you don't trust your own diagram. And then with logical reasoning, what I've said on this platform and with friends is that I just think that if you understand the stimulus, it doesn't really matter what they ask you, because you'll be prepared for anything. And so digest the stimulus. And so I think that's kind of how I make up for it. And then also, I'm an avid reader of digital media. I used to read books all the time when I was a kid, but just personally now I love reading like The Atlantic, New York Times. I'm constantly looking for more articles to read. And so I built up my comfort level with, articles that are, I write in my own personal life. I'm a writer. So I think you mentioned November as a test date for you, maybe just build when you're on your downtime, just open up an Atlantic article, something with like the white screen that's kind of so that you're building up that familiarity, so that you're not and anything that mimics what the passages actually look like. So maybe that helps.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's fantastic advice. So we've got from Tina the idea of practicing more, using LawHub. Richard just gave some great advice specifically on how to mimic LawHub. There's actually nothing like using LawHub itself. And you actually get 2 exams on the LawHub platform for free. You get 71 and 73. And then for $99 a year, you get the majority of the exams in that format. But nobody is allowed to mimic LawHub precisely. And LawHub is what you'll be doing on test day with the Flex or the digital, if and when they go back to tablet. But for November, they just announced, of course, it will be a Flex. So if you want to see what that's like, go on LawHub, do 71 and 73 on there. Consider getting the LawHub subscription to do the majority of them in that way, because nothing is going to be as close as that.
I can't support that enough. It's exactly like LawHub. Like it looks the same. The formatting is the same. It's like you're in LawHub when you go to do it. I was immediately struck by it's just exactly the same. So like you cannot really practice anything that's more similar than that, because there's just no difference between the two.
Yeah. So look into that. Corey, thanks for sharing your question. Folks, this has been a fantastic session. I appreciate all of you joining this evening. I've got a couple of other sessions like this on the YouTube channel. Everyone is different. It's based on the challenges folks bring, the way people respond, the way people contribute. So check those out for more. I've put them in the chat again on the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel. I've also got a link to the courses for those who are not members and want to find out more. We're running these sorts of sessions approximately every 2 weeks. And so please feel free to ask questions or check out the samples. Feel free to reach out with any follow-ups about the courses. They're a lot of fun. We have a variety of different formats. This is just one of them. But I want to thank all of you for joining and for asking such powerful questions, for giving such useful responses to everyone else. Hope you found this useful. And feel free to reach out with any follow-ups. But otherwise, have a good night, folks, and thanks for joining. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.